Hi everyone, I hope you guys are doing good. So as a part of our Python tutorial series, in last lecture we learned about Python exception handling. Now in this lecture, extending previous lectures knowledge, we will learn about Python user defined exceptions or Python custom exceptions. So without wasting time, let's start. So this is the script which I have prepared to demo you guys about Python user defined or custom exceptions. Okay. So first we will understand about what is the syntax to create custom exception and how to raise that, right? So to create the custom exception, you have to define your custom exception class and you have to inherit the any exception class. Okay, so in this case, I'm inheriting exception class as a parent class, and this is my exception, which is a child class, right? So this is my user defined class, which is a child class, and I'm inheriting the inbuilt Python exception class that is exception. Okay, and then I'm not doing any operation here, just doing pass. Okay, and then I'm calling my user defined exception, my exception, and passing a message that will raise my exception as an exception, and it will give the message as my custom exception. Okay, so let's try this on our idle shell. So let me just copy this exception class and let me just paste it here. So enter. Okay, so my exception class got defined, right? Which is inheriting the parent class that is exception, right? Now let's raise this exception. Okay, so I'm raising this exception, right? To raise your user defined exception, you have to use raise keyword and your exception name. Okay, so that's how we raise it, right? So raise keyword, my exception name, and this is the message which I'm giving, right? Let's do enter. So you can see exception has been raised, right? So exception name is my exception, and this is the message, my custom exception, which I am providing, right? So that's how we can, define exception class, right? User defined exception class or custom exception class, and that's how using raise keyword we can raise that exception which we have defined, right? So this is the basic syntax. Now we'll learn more about in detail, extending other methods of exception class. Okay, so this is my class called my exception again, and I'm again inheriting the exception parent class. Okay, so now I'm defining an initializer method which has three variable, that is self, right, default variable, and then there's a message variable, and then there is a exception error code. Okay, I'm using super method just to initialize the message variable in the exception class, parent exception class, right? So using super variable, you can initialize your parent class variables, right? So message is a parent class variable, right? Also, it is available in child, right? So I'm initializing my child variable, right? Child class variable, and there's one more child class variable, exception error code, right? So message and error code, right? Also, I'm initializing this message variable in the parent class, right? Now there is a string method. So this is a string method. This is method is also available in exception class. So we are here, what we are doing is overwriting this string method from this exception class and then modifying it little bit, right? So in the return, I'm just giving a message. This is custom exception, right? And printing the error code which I'm providing and also the error message, right? Message with messages, right? So this is my string method, right? Which is a default method of exception class. We are here overriding this in my child class, my exception, right? And then I'm also defining one of my own method for my child class, that is my error method, right? And just a simple print statement, return this is my error method. Okay, so we'll see how we can use this. So let's define this exception class, custom exception class. So let me just paste it here, right? So this is my exception class, my exception, right? And these are the three methods: initializer method, string method, and my error method, right? Enter, enter, right? So my exception class got defined, right? Now to use that my exception class, I'm writing a function, okay, def my function where I'm passing an argument as x, right? And then we have try block and the exception block, right? So in try block, I'm checking if x equals to 0. If the argument which is passed is equals to 0, then raise this my exception, okay? And while raising, I'm providing two things. One is message, another one is error code, right? So I'm providing message and error code, right? Two parameters which is in initializer method of my child class, my exception, right? And the message is division by 0 is not allowed and the error code is 200, right? Else I'm returning 100 by x, right? So whatever number I'm passing that will divide 100 and whatever output that will be returned using return clause, right? So in except block, I'm taking my exception, right? From here, when my exception will be raised. So I'm accepting it here in the exception block and then taking it in ex variable, right? And then printing the name of the exception, right? Ex dot this dunder method, right? Name, and then printing the exception message, right? Using print ex. Also, I'm calling my error method, which is defined in my exception class my error method, right? So I'm calling my method using my exception name and the method name, right? So I'm executing this ex dot my error method and then printing the output, right? So let's define this my function. So let me paste it here. Enter, enter. Okay, so my function got defined, right? Now I can call this function, right? And we'll see how my exception is raised, which is my custom exception. So just call my function with argument as 0, right? First we'll see how exception will be raised, okay? So I'm passing 0 as argument, enter, right? So first it is printing the exception name, right? My exception. It is printing the message, right? This is custom exception 200 with message as division by 0 is not allowed, right? So this is coming from which? This is string method, right? So the string method has both error code as well as error message, right? So here you can see 200 as error code and this is the message division by 0 is not allowed, right? So this is coming from string method, right? And next I'm calling ex dot my error method, right? So my error method is also getting called in exception block, so will return this message. This is my error method, right? This is my error method, right? So that's how you can define the exception classes, and that's how you can use your exception class to raise your custom exceptions, right? Now we'll see what are the hierarchy, right? How you know that exception class has a string method, right? So to check that, there's a very simple strategy. Just type help, right? And in bracket you just paste this exception method exception class which you are inheriting, right? So it will show you all the details about your exception parent class. Enter. So you can see squeeze text 73 line, right? If you double click on that, so it will print all everything about this exception class, right? So this is the parent exception class, right? Which is this is the class exception which is inheriting base exception, right? Base exception is the highest level of exception class, right? So let's check the hierarchy of exception class. So this is the hierarchy of exception class. You can see we have base exception as at the top, and it has this many exception, right? And exception class which we are inheriting, that is also part of base exception class, right? And this exception class has 20 20 classes inside that, right? Different exceptions like arithmetic error, buffer error, right? All the errors are there, right? All the exceptions are there, type error, value error, right? So based on the usage, extend the parent class. You choose the parent class based on the error. Suppose there is a zero division by error, right? Zero division error exception, right? So what you do, you extend this arithmetic error. You can also extend this arithmetic error instead of extending the exception error. You can also extend arithmetic error, right? Or you can also extend zero division error itself and then create your custom zero division error exception, right? So based on the usage, based on the exceptions which you want to customize, you can inherit the parent classes, right? So there are many parent classes available. These are all Python inbuilt exception classes, right? So based on the usage, you can inherit any parent exception class. right? And to check what are the methods available in any of the parent class, so you just type help and in bracket type this exception name, right? So here we are checking about this exception class, right? So it is saying it is inheriting base exception, right, which is the top of which is at the top, right? So it is inheriting this base exception, and it has some methods also, right? Method resolution order, right? And you can see it built in subclasses. It has 20 subclasses total, right? So I showed you what are the subclasses there, right? These all are subclasses of this exception block, right? So that's how the hierarchy works. So there are 20 subclasses for this exception class, right? And then methods. So you can see one initializer method is there, right? So initializer method is there. Then also it should have that string method, this is the string method, right, which we used in our code, right? So this is the string method, right? It also has initializer method, right? So these are the methods we are overwriting it here in the child class in my exception block, right? So I hope you guys understood, right, that how to check the methods and classes available in any of the custom exception class or inbuilt exception class, right? So you can just type help and you can check any exception class. Suppose I want to check this zero division error. So I'll just copy and I'll just paste it here in the help, right, and enter, right? So it will show you all the details, all the methods, everything available in this zero division error class, right? So it also has initializer method, right? It also has this many methods, right? You can use all the methods based on the uses, right? So I hope you guys understood about the custom exception class, how to define the custom exception class, how to inherit any exception class in your custom exception class, right? How to override the methods of your parent class, right? And how to raise your defined exception class, right? How to raise that, right? And how to print the methods, right? How to define extra methods in your exception class and how to call those methods, right? So I hope you guys like this lecture. If you guys like this lecture, please subscribe my channel. Thank you guys.